A funny thing happened to the Edmonton Oilers en route to a Game 1 win over the Dallas Stars in their Western Conference Final. It didn't happen. This is NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Thursday, May 22nd, 2025. Vic and Neil with you. So what happened?
You want me to figure that thing out?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of would.
All right. Well, let me tell you something. Did you hear about the Knicks in Indiana, by the way, last night? Because this is just the same thing. Happened in hockey, happened in basketball. Late in the game, the team blew it. The Oilers, great first and second period, get themselves into penalty trouble and can't kill penalties. Dallas luckily draws a couple of penalties and is a fabulous power play, and the tables completely turned. I mean, it was mind-boggling to see this. In the conference final, you're not supposed to see a team lose a 3-1 lead all in the third period, and that's what happened.
Were you watching basketball last night?
No, but it popped up on my phone.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know better. You know better than that. Look at this. What's behind me?
I thought
here?
I did.
Canadian flag behind me.
All right, so let's start unpacking this one. So the Dallas Stars, Peter DeBoer, going 12-6 in terms of forwards and defensemen. Obvious that Miro Heiskanen has gotten himself back into game condition. As a result, Alex Petrovic out of the lineup. And as much as we say that there's feeling out processes in playoff series at the start, I think we've started to see less and less of that, particularly in this year's playoffs. And Oilers, certainly the better of the play early. I thought Dallas was flat-footed. I thought they looked slow. And Jake Ottinger had to come up big early, stopping Connor McDavid. Rink-length rush. And he went around Esa Lindell like he was parked.
You know, the Oilers can make anybody look slow, and they did make the Dallas Stars look slow, but McDavid is going about 100 miles an hour out there, so, you know, you'd have to be a rocket ship to be able to not look slow with him on the ice. Yeah, it looked to me, after a little bit of rest for both these teams, like Dallas was the rustier of the two.
Midway point of the first period, Leon Draisaitl beats Wyatt Johnston wide and scores far side on Jake Ottinger. But the one thing that was not in the analysis on ESPN last night, you don't have to take a piece of a guy to make a great play. And Connor McDavid, with a non-contact pick on Johnston, gave the opening for Draisaitl to go wide to get that shot off and open the scoring.
You're right. I mean, McDavid gave Draisaitl that opening, and boy, did he put that one quickly past Ottinger.
And then Zach Hyman hit a crossbar. So more good Oilers offense, good flurry until Draisaitl lost control of the puck inside the Dallas blue line, and Tyler Seguin gets his first goal in 11 games to tie the score at 1-1.
Tyler Seguin looking like it was 2011, and he was playing for the Boston Bruins against the Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs. He looked great on that breakaway and just perfect shot to beat Stuart Skinner.
McDavid, in the second period, more speed, more quickness, and I think we got to remind people that speed and quickness are not the same thing. And his speed is something that we have never seen in the NHL before, may never see again to this level. But his ability to move and create chances in short spaces is the totality of the brilliance of his game.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, there have been others that have had his quickness, Mario Lemieux being one of them, who was a 6'5", but fantastically quick with his stick and the puck and so on. Connor McDavid combines both things, this speed coming down that almost scares you. Like you're thinking, if that was me going that fast, I could break my legs. But no, he is something to watch.
on the first power play of the game for the Oilers. McDavid's centering pass finds its way through 3 sticks to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's standing all alone in the slot, and it's a 2-1 lead.
Hopkins was real good on that one, and that's when you started to think, like this is not good for Dallas. They're going to win this one.
And 100 seconds later, Evan Bouchard from the left circle goes high glove, excellent snapshot, and it's 3-1.
And that's when you start to think even more. Oh my God, the Oilers are going to win this first game right in Dallas.
Darnell Nurse almost made this 4-1 shortly thereafter. And going into the intermission, ESPN had a really good stat that the line of Jason Robertson, Johnston, and Matt Duchene, minus 25 combined through the first 2 series. And Johnston, remember my breakout player?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't think he'd break out at a minus 13 through 2 series. The trio was minus 6 through 2 periods of this game. But things started to change. Late second period, Brett Kulak takes a hooking penalty against Marchment with $1:02 left in the period. So that carries over into the third. And Heiskanen, long shot from the left point on the power play. Excellent screen by Mason Marchment. And it makes it 3-2. And after American Airlines Center being pretty dead almost the entire night, things start to perk up.
And that collective energy that you see inside of an arena, stadium, any kind of place where the energy plays off of one another, and the people sitting watching the energy, you can see the energy flow back and forth. And certainly now, suddenly, everybody wakes up and goes, we've got a shot here. It's 3-2. We have a chance.
Not long after that, Corey Perry, ill-advised, high-sticking penalty in the offensive zone against Sam Steele. And that ends up with Mikael Granlund scoring a power play goal at 3:49. The game is even. And then right after that, Evander Kane with a high-sticking penalty against Matt Duchene. Duchene winds up scoring the power play goal. 3 power play goals in 5 minutes and 26 seconds. These veteran players that have done such a great job for the Oilers, Corey Perry and Evander Kane, wind up taking 2 key penalties. Now, somehow the Oilers are behind because they can't kill penalties and the power play comes to life.
And the building is going insane. It's ecstatic. The energy is high. The Oilers, you can see them deflated, and who wouldn't be? And the game has totally changed.
Stu Skinner kept the game at 4-3 a little before the midway point of the period, stopping Leon Bischel. And the best Oilers chance came from close in. Connor Brown missing the net with 5:12 left. But what surprised me, Neil, was the inability of Edmonton to generate a lot of offense after they fell behind. It's almost like they lost their game. Dallas found their game. Oh, did I say the LA series in reverse?
No, you know what? You're right. And I think it all goes back to this whole thing of like a dagger went into the Oilers balloon and just completely exploded it. And the Stars balloon got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's rare you're ever going to see anything like this because it's a 5-goal third period, which, by the way, gives the Stars their 7th straight home win. Yeah, it was a very odd game. I was thinking this morning before we did this, how am I going to analyze this thing, which was a tale of 2 games, really?
The last 2 goals scored by Dallas was Sam Steele, a backhand shot that was deflected in by Tyler Seguin with 3:58 left, and then 43 seconds later, a rink-length shot down the ice by Esa Lindell. And now Dallas has consecutive series opening wins after losing 8 of those in a row. Something I want to hit on here is we've looked at the goaltending in both of these conference final series. And I think both of us believe that the equalizers or the advantages go to the Dallas Stars with Jake Ottinger over Stu Skinner and the Florida Panthers with Sergei Bobrovsky over Freddie Anderson. And in this game, I'm watching Stu Skinner. Like, when Seguin came down on his breakaway, I thought there's no way he's stopping. He's just not. And I think there's a certain confidence that you have in a goaltender in whether or not he's going to be able to make a big save at a big time. Skinner was no worse than Anderson was in game one of the Eastern Final. But I never got the sense he was going to come up with the big saves when he needed them to keep Edmonton on top of this game.
No, you're right. And there's a great parallel there between Bobrovsky and Ottinger and Skinner and Anderson. And, you know, it remains to be seen if that is the Achilles heel for both those teams. And that is the backbone of the two teams with Bobrovsky and Ottinger. But you're absolutely right. There is a parallel there. You watch the game. You're not really that confident that Skinner's going to keep them in the game. Not that he's going to let in bad goals, but he's just not going to stop great opportunities, fantastic opportunities. Like, you know, we saw in that other series, we saw breakaways stopped by the goaltender early, or even in the Toronto-Florida series, that William Nylander came down the ice on a breakaway and Bobrovsky stops him. Well, would you bet on William Nylander scoring, or would you bet on Tyler Seguin? I'd bet on William Nylander, but then you tell me that the goalies are Stuart Skinner and Bobrovsky, and wait a minute, I'll bet on Seguin now because it's easier to beat Skinner than to beat Bobrovsky. So your point is well taken. We'll see how these two series end up, but to me, that's the most glaring part of these two series is the goaltenders, because you need those saves at the moment that the other team has a golden opportunity.
So we talked about in our preview that if both teams get the requisite scoring, the spread out scoring, that it may come down to defense and goaltending. And that's exactly what happened last night.
Yes, it was. As Draisaitl said after the game, he says, look, I'm not on the penalty killing units, but he says, we got to do a better job. We got to be able to kill penalties. And he says, and we can't take penalties the way the guys took them tonight. We got to be more mature. We got to be better. Funny thing is that the most mature guy on the team took one of the penalties.
Yeah.
And almost 40 years old.
He is 40. Turned 40 last Friday.
Oh, he turned 40. Okay,
yeah.
So there you go. Well, I get mixed up with these 40-year-olds with Ovechkin, Brent Burns, now with Corey Perry. But anyway, I think this is going to be a great series, this Dallas-Edmonton series.
Edmonton gave us 40 minutes of what they can do and be effective in this series. I think that there is less of a concern for them than the Carolina Hurricanes. And granted, Edmonton loses on the road, Carolina loses at home. But you watch those first 40 minutes, and Edmonton had this game exactly where they wanted it. It was almost a perfect road game for two periods.
It was for two periods, and then unfortunately they had to play the third.
They did. And they will play game 2 Friday at 8 o'clock on ESPN. Thursday, the Panthers and Hurricanes resume their series, game 2 in Carolina, 8 o'clock on TNT. So Rod Brind'Amour is now faced on making adjustments, and you had spoken of this very often, that team that loses, team that has to adjust. And while no team is perfect, is there a realistic solution when the Panthers are so on their game at this point?
You know, that's what we'll see tonight. Is there a way that they change their game to be better? Do they take advantage of some chinks in the armor of the Panthers, which there are? We may not be able to recognize them from the TV set, but there are. Can they draw the Panthers into penalties? What can they do? Where is the crack that they can expose in the Panthers, because they're going to have to do that. And again, not to be obvious, but Freddie Anderson's going to have to come up and be as good or better than Bobrovsky.
One of the things that the Panthers managed to break through on was this outstanding penalty killing that we have seen all season, going back to October with the Carolina Hurricanes. Panthers were 2 for 3 on the power play. And if this power play continues to go the way it is on the road, and I believe it's over 40% right now, Carolina is going to be really careful in this game, and there is a little bit of bad blood boiling over after the Brad Marchand, Shane Gostisbehere episode where Gostisbehere shot the puck at him. And if there's any carryover, Florida can take some liberties. They've already got home ice advantage back. Carolina does not have that liberty going into game 2.
But that's where I say maybe Carolina can draw Florida into taking penalties. Florida's got a number of guys that, play on the edge. Marchand is one of them. Bennett is another one of them. I think Ekblad has been playing on the edge, to be honest with you, in the playoffs. I don't think Gostisbehere plays on the edge. I think Gostisbehere got pissed and shot the puck at Marchand, and then they got into something. We'll see, but perhaps that is where they can draw these guys in. But Marchand is really good at going right to the edge and not over.
And that was an exact point that I wanted to bring up to you, because I believe that we have seen throughout these playoffs that Florida is known for going right to the edge, sometimes stepping over it. And I don't see them, and I haven't seen them throughout these playoffs, go any further than they need to. It's almost like they have matured to the point that they know exactly where to go without even having to go over at this point.
I couldn't agree with you more. Perhaps one of the guys that you don't expect to do something stupid will, like Mikko Mikkola or somebody like that. Maybe, they've got to get somebody off their game. And again, we'll see. Rod Brind'Amour is one of the top coaches in the league, so I'm sure he'll make some real good adjustments. But Carolina cannot lose tonight.
I think they have to come out hard and fast and smart. But if you do, and you fall behind, and you think, well, we thought we had the solution to this, and then you see that Florida's beating back everything that you're bringing to the table, that's where I think this could become problematic. Because if they go down 0-2, I'll go on record here. They're not coming back.
No. You mean they're not coming back to Carolina, or they're not coming back in the series?
They're not coming back in the series. They may find a way to win a game in Florida somehow, but
no,
they lose tonight. They're not winning 4 out of 5.
No, that's why I said they cannot lose tonight. They can't. They must win.
So are you tipping people off to go to their favorite wagering sites at this point?
The way I do, which is whoever I pick, go bet on the others quickly. I would say tonight that Florida will win. So put your money on Carolina.
How'd that work out last night?
I steered everybody in the right direction for 2 periods because I said Dallas would win. And sure enough, it all looked like, there he goes again. Neil is wrong again for 2 periods. But then Dallas comes through in the third. So I ended up being right, but leading people in the wrong direction.
So is there a new thing now where these sites are distributing 2/3 winnings?
Yeah, they should be. Go period by period.
It's a whole new prop bet, that's for sure. One personnel note that we should mention here, Jalen Chatfield, still questionable, undisclosed injury. He did skate on the off day, but now the question is, if he can't go, does Nikishin or Morrow be that defenseman that replaces him, given that Morrow had such a rough game in game 1?
Well, that's exactly what I said yesterday. I said, will Coach Brind'Amour go tomorrow? Now it is tomorrow, and we've got to see if he goes tomorrow.
You said that yesterday.
Yeah, because that game was tomorrow.
And we'll update that tomorrow. One other personnel note for the Hurricanes. Forward Mark Jankowski has been deemed medically cleared to return to the lineup. So we'll see if indeed Rod Brind'Amour makes that change for Game 2. Some news around the NHL. A lot of front office stuff here. The New York Islanders have been granted permission to speak with current president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Brendan Shanahan. He's been in his current position with the Leafs for 11 seasons, but his contract expires at the end of June. Does this surprise you at all?
Yes, because it's a mixed message, because the Toronto Maple Leafs have not said that they're done with Brendan Shanahan as their president, who's done, I think, a fantastic job for 11 seasons. But yet, I would imagine that John Collins, who's one of the minority owners with the Islanders, has a long-standing relationship with Brendan Shanahan since they both worked at the league at the same time. So he asked for permission. And why would Toronto grant that? They're still wanting Brendan Shanahan to present to them what he's going to do about this organization going forward. So it's a mixed message. Come tell us what you would do to change everything around. Oh, but at the same time, yeah, Islanders, you can talk to him. Well, if you were going to keep a guy, like Montreal didn't let Islanders talk to Jeff Gorton. They knew they wanted to keep him. No, we don't want you talking to him. It's a real mixed message.
Some interesting threads here also, because off the cuff last week, I just asked you where Mitch Marner might be a good fit. And you would happen to say the Islanders, just taking a team, for example. And if Shanahan goes to the island, it certainly makes it more plausible that Marner could follow him there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they know how good Marner is, and that would get Marner out of the Toronto hot box. Vic, let me say this. It's really hard for me to imagine Brendan Shanahan going from the spotlight of the hockey mecca of Toronto to the outpost and certainly hardly thought about Islanders on a league-wide basis. Toronto is one of the staples of the league. When Toronto was really bad and Harold Ballard owned them and so on, Toronto was still one of the main cogs of the wheel of the NHL. The Islanders were when they were winning championships, obviously, but that today they're in that group. They're not with the Rangers. They're not a big cog in this wheel. And I'm talking about the business. I'm not talking about whether they're a good team or a bad team. If you had to name the real big franchises in the NHL, Chicago Blackhawks, LA Kings, New York Rangers, Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, Islanders aren't in there. So for Brendan Shanahan to go from 11 years of running one of the hottest spotlights in the league to running a team that's under a flashlight, I just don't see it.
More news out of Toronto. Associate coach Lane Lambert is speaking with the Seattle Kraken for their head coaching position. I mean, he's been primarily an assistant during his career. In addition to the Maple Leafs, he was an assistant in Nashville, Washington, and with the Islanders, and he was actually head coach in the Island and made the playoffs in 2023, fired after 45 games in the 23-24 season, then replaced by Patrick Waugh. And there are other candidates that have been mentioned potentially to take that head coaching position over in Seattle, per Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet. Jeff Blashill, Don Granato, David Quinn, Mitch Love, who's currently a Washington assistant, and Marco Sturm, who's coaching the AHL, the German national team, also an assistant with the LA Kings. But if you're the Kraken right now, you had Dave Haxtell for 3 years. You brought in Dan Bylsma and let him go after a year. None of the current candidates have had success on an NHL level. Is it not time for the Kraken to try to go after a bigger name, somebody that has had some success, perhaps somebody that's currently sitting in the recycle bin?
When you look at this list, that Jeff Blashill, even though he handled the Detroit Red Wings during those awful years when they had no chance of making the playoffs, this is, just not that long ago. He went through 2 or 3 years, 4 years of coming back because they knew they weren't going to be very good. And Kenny Holland and crew and Stevie Yzerman, when he got there, brought Jeff back. Now he's been with Tampa Bay and John Cooper, seen how Cooper runs things, been an important part of the Tampa Bay Lightning, certainly a winning franchise. Maybe he gets another chance. Don Granato, no, nothing against Don. I love him and Tony and their sister, but Don was coached Buffalo Sabres. Not much of a chance there.
Yeah.
David Quinn coached the Rangers during their dark days of no playoffs and then got let go there, hired by San Jose, has no hope there.
Yeah.
Lasted a couple of years there. So David, as much of a good guy as he is, and he's been real good, he doesn't have a winning track record. Mitch Love has no track record, and Marco Sturm has no track record as a head coach. You add to this that Bradshaw has now been hired by the Devils as a Sheldon Keefe assistant, so he's off the market. You wonder about John Tortorella. Should Seattle look at Tortorella? Tortorella did a good job with Philadelphia for a couple of years. He's going to have an expiration date on him after about 3 years, but he did do a real good job with a young team in Philadelphia for the first 2 to 3 seasons.
I'm just a little bit surprised that Francis continues to look at head coaches with just marginal track records in the NHL.
But don't forget, Francis is not the GM anymore, right? They put Jason Botterill in as GM. Maybe that's where the Don Granato connection comes from.
Yeah. Well, certainly would be, right?
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see where they go. Seattle is a very disappointing franchise because they had a good start. They knocked out Colorado, but they've just treaded water ever since. And like you've said to me, and I've said back, you make a change and you go to Bilesma and you get the same results. So, I mean, is it the coaching or is it something in the management?
I think 2 things have hurt this franchise. The first was certainly the Golden Knights' success in their very first year in the NHL. And the second was their second season, because they created those expectations that in seasons 3 and 4, they just haven't been able to live up to.
And I have some breaking news for you.
Bulletin. Go ahead.
Remember, I was just singing the praises of Jeff Blashill and how he did a good job with a very underwhelming Detroit Red Wings team for a number of years.
Yes.
He was replaced by Derek Lalonde. Steve Yzerman reached back to his old organization, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and got Derek Lalonde to go there. Jeff Blashill took Derek Lalonde's spot in Tampa Bay and worked with John Cooper for the last number of years, honing his skills with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mm-hmm. Here it comes. Ready for it?
Drum roll.
Connor Bedard's new head coach, Jeff Blashill, the Chicago Blackhawks.
Wow. Good one.
There you go, everybody. Breaking news.
I think I like that fit.
I do too. He's worked with a young group. He's a patient guy, and he coached Western Michigan.
Well, first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
All right, put your voice on.
It's time for This Day in Stanley Cup History.
Actually, it's This Day in Stanley Cup Futility. And I'll tell you where I'm going with this. So May 22nd, really not a lot of good stuff. And occasionally you're going to get a day that's a little bit sour. So we're going to go off the grid a little bit here. Because on this date in 1970, and then we'll bring this full circle so it actually makes sense, the NHL announced that the league would expand from 12 to 14 teams for the 70-71 season with the Buffalo Sabres and Vancouver Canucks officially granted franchises. So both of these teams joined the Eastern Division, with Chicago going to the West. And I always try to look at a map and kind of figure things out. Like, how could they put Vancouver in the East geographically? And I always lost that fight because it made absolutely no sense. But anyway, here's the catch, is that after the Maple Leafs, these two franchises, the Canucks and the Sabres, are the next up on the Stanley Cup futility list. 0-5 combined in the final. Sabres lost to the Flyers in 6 games in 1975, 6 games to the Dallas Stars in 1999. Don't mention Brett Hull's name here. And the Canucks have lost 3 finals, swept by the Islanders in 82, and then lost 7-game series to the Rangers in 94, and the Boston Bruins in 2011. So any history you want to drop in there, those two franchises?
I just want to tell you that I went to a game at Madison Square Garden in the Buffalo Sabres' first season in the league to see Buffalo play New York. And on the marquee, as I was walking in, it said, "Tonight, the Buffalo Sabres with Reggie Fleming."
Who was a former Ranger. Also.
Right, and that's why, of course, they were saying it like that. I looked it up. It ended up being a 2-2 tie. I was a very young boy then. And the Vancouver Canucks, I would imagine, wanted to be in the East, and I'll tell you why. Because the Canadian teams were in the East. And they probably didn't want to be in an all-American division. They wanted to be in with Toronto and Montreal, I would imagine. Now, that's my guess, and knowing how things work in Canada. But do you remember the Blackhawks moved to the West and just killed the Western Division? I mean, they were first place for a number of years in a row there. Because, I mean, they were basically in a division with American League teams.
Yes, coming out of the first expansion. So
yeah, right. So and those teams in that first expansion in 1967, they were not getting what Vegas and Seattle and even what the Minnesota Wild and Columbus Blue Jackets and all them got. They were getting nothing. Like those original 6 franchises said, you can come in the league and we're going to beat the crap out of you for about a decade until you can finally get some players.
Well, the Flyers certainly reversed that trend with their Stanley Cup, the first of 2 in 1974. But look, not a great date in terms of major events happening, but we still give you something that you probably didn't know before.
That includes me. I didn't know it was on this exact day. Here's the other thing. 2 seconds. But so they announce on May 22nd of 1970 that they're going to put these 2 teams in. Now the management of those 2 teams has, 5 months to get ready for the next season, to get right into the NHL. I mean, imagine that. Like Columbus Blue Jackets, I think Doug McLean, who got named GM, had 2 full non-playing seasons to prepare for the Blue Jackets. And back then they gave him no time. And that might have been also because they were worried about the WHA coming, although the WHA hadn't come in yet. But the WHA came in 1972, which is when the Islanders and the Atlanta Flames came into the league. Those 2 teams definitely were awarded franchises to keep them out of the WHA.
Good stuff. Neil and I will return on Friday with another edition of Stanley Cupdate. And remember, on Saturday, we drop Doormat to Dynasty, the 45th anniversary celebration of the New York Islanders' first Stanley Cup championship. And once again, we will be joined by Captain Dennis Potvin, left wing John Tonelli, and defenseman Ken Morrow. So please subscribe, like us, and we look forward to speaking with you again on Friday.